Do you want to learn effective ways to build relationships, generate sales, and grow your business from successful entrepreneurs, startups, and CEOs without listening to a long interview? If so, you've come to the right place. Gresham Harkless values your time and is ready to share with you precisely the information you're in search of. This is the I Am CEO podcast.
Hello. This is Gresh from the I Am CEO podcast, and I have a very special guest on the show today. I have Brian Johnson of MJ Strategic. Brian, it's awesome to have you on the show.
Thank you. I appreciate being invited.
No problem. Super excited to have you on. And what I wanted to do is just read a little bit more about Brian so you can hear about all the awesome things that he's doing. And Brian spent over 20 years working for 3 different Fortune 500 companies. During this time, he led teams in sourcing, supply chain, commodity management, operations, marketing and sales, and conducted business in over 25 countries. More recently, Brian founded MJ Strategic Group, a consulting firm partnering with companies to drive strategic focus in the areas of leadership, sales and marketing, and people resources. He and his team look to bring their experiences and expertise to clients to create a path to achieve their potential. Brian, are you ready to speak to the IMCO community?
I am. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Let's do it. So to kick everything off, I wanted to hear a little bit more about what I call your CEO story. We'll let you get started through business.
Yeah. So if you can start out and say fear initially drove the path, and then maybe courage brought it back. But so I started out, just knowing that business was the right way to go. And my father owned 3 restaurants about the same time he took ownership of them. I was kind of trying to find my way through college and figure out exactly what I wanted to do. And to be honest, I saw what it did to him, both personally and from a health perspective, and thought, yep, I'm going Fortune 500 route all the way. I'll take the weekly paycheck and not have to fight that ever again. And to be quite honest, I think it was a great option, great decision, because, I got a chance to work for some great companies that really invested in my growth and development, and got to a point where it was like, all right, I think 20 years away from entrepreneurial life is enough. I think I got to go give it a shot, because I got to rectify what I didn't try when I probably should have. So that's what got me back here, and really just kind of took a look at what I really enjoyed doing, where the skill set kind of landed, and then really what type of companies did we want to serve, and that's kind of how we wound up kind of picking the route that we did, and here we are.
Yeah, I appreciate that story. It sounds like you kind of had that entrepreneurial DNA, but I think a lot of times we forget sometimes when we're thinking about, growing a business, just how much of all those skills and knowledge and all that stuff kind of builds up over time. So to get that Fortune 500 experience, especially, and to have and wear, it sounds like I'm guessing a lot of different hats and get it so much expertise that only helps you, when you're growing your business, not something that kind of takes away from you.
Yeah, I love the fact when you work with business owners right now, I can say I'm in the same boat. I got to eat the cookies I bake here. So
yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to hear a little bit more about the cookies you're baking. Could you tell us a little bit more about exactly what you're doing with your business, how you're supporting your clients?
Yeah. And so, as we kind of look at, maybe the way to say it is, when you're kind of making that shift, and a lot of people make the jump from the corporate world into consulting and things like that. And for the right reasons, they pick where they go. Ours was a little bit, I'd say, different. I don't know if I'd go so far as to say entirely unique, but rather than saying, hey, this is an industry that I know really well, I'm going to go be a consultant in this industry. We rather went with what are areas that we're really passionate about, people, marketing, and sales. And then what's the group, the business kind of framework that we're really passionate about serving. And it's not really about the size of the business. It's just, you go from Fortune 500 and consulting Fortune 500, you're trying to do something different than maybe if you pick a tier down and sort of like, the small to medium-sized corporations that are on that verge where, hey, do we go hire VPs of these departments, or do we go get that level of work on the outside? And that's what we really try to provide, is that kind of that option where maybe now's not the best time to invest in a long-term resource, but we need a 5-year sales strategy and need it to be handed to us where we can go execute it. The thing we really enjoy is we trust the process of these areas. Like business strategy is business strategy, whether you're in one industry to the next. Right. And so we're really good about trying to tailor all that really to meet the need and not meet the industry. So, we don't come in and say, if you're in, I pick the construction industry, that this is the perfect strategy for a construction industry. This is just the perfect strategy based on the needs you've identified and how we approach doing it. So
yeah, that makes perfect sense, and kind of sounds like it's based off whatever the goal might be. And it kind of sounds like those, and correct me if I'm wrong, the clients are kind of thinking about maybe, making that jump, but in order to make that jump, they need those core principles. It sounds like no matter what industry, to make sure those are developed, like your sales process and your strategy and things like that.
absolutely. Yep.
That makes sense. And so I wanted to ask you for what I call your secret sauce. And it could be for you personally, or it could be for your business. But what do you feel kind of sets you apart and makes you guys unique?
And again, I mean, it's not to reiterate it, but maybe to expand on it. But that belief that the process really can kind of guide you to the end result. For us, it's really that ability to sit down and understand what you're really looking for. So rather than somebody, if it's me and I'm looking for, more leads or something, I'll tell you what type of leads I need. But in the reality, if you're looking for leads that can highly convert, you might have a better way of showing me how to do that than I might know myself. And we trust that once we hear that and we start working through, we make it something so that the end result is actually what you're asking for. Maybe not necessarily every time what you're articulating, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And so let me ask you, and do you find that it's kind of like more of a back and forth kind of conversation where you're trying to, I guess, make sure you're saying the correct thing and then making sure you're getting feedback to make sure that you are getting exactly what they're looking for? Because I think sometimes, we do have problems kind of articulating exactly what we're looking for.
Yeah, and so we really try to dig a layer deeper by testing some things. So we'll ask specific questions to even get a wrong answer, because in a lot of cases, if you're doing strategy, sometimes the result of no is the best strategy of all. Like, not spend all our resources doing everything. So really trying to draw out what are the 1, 2, or 3 major components of what you're doing. We call them the pillars. But once you've established what those pillars are, then we'll fill in around it when we work with you. So that's kind of where we bring a little bit of expertise, if you want to say to that.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And do you also find that sometimes when you're in the business or you're working on the business, you're so close to it that you do need that outside perspective, even to just, find out what those pillars are and make sure that they're strong enough to develop that business?
Yeah, and we found that exact same thing, the outside perspective, not just from a consulting side, but even from a non-industry specific side. That you may, we don't try to tell people we know more than you. We kind of focus on we just might know differently than you, and we'll try to bring that to your organization.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I feel like that's definitely a skill that's kind of agnostic, if that's the right word. No matter what industry you're kind of in, the ability to be able to kind of see the forest for the trees, to be able to kind of test out those ideas. That's something that you kind of have to do in every business. And sometimes if you have somebody that's been in that business, they're entrenched in it, and sometimes they can't see past that. They can't see different ways to come up with solutions and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and we definitely view it as it's not a your way, our way. It's when they're both combined. How can that drive the best type of result?
Right. I definitely appreciate that and appreciate that perspective. You guys, helping out business owners with that. So I wanted to switch gears a little bit, and I wanted to ask you for what I call a CEO hack. And this could be an app, a book, or a habit that you have, but what's something that makes you more effective and efficient?
Yeah, the big one for me, I've started to even send this to people that I know, that even our clients, but I don't know if you've ever read the book Atomic Habits by James Clear.
I haven't.
So it's really all about changing things in a very small way to develop, massive habits in your life. And it's across the board. It's not just business, but, the only thing we do control are our actions, in a roundabout way. And so this helps you kind of get that control and discipline, and it mounts. And I've just found that I'm one of those people that has the bright, shiny object syndrome where, whatever I see, it can distract me a little bit. But this helps you kind of rein in and control what, might become distractions or might take you away from that end goal. So it's probably not the most profound way to approach business in every way, but I find there's little battles you can always win. And once you start winning little battles, it's a lot easier to string them together.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm glad to hear I'm not the only one that likes bright, shiny objects as well, because I also have the same thing. I think one of the books that actually resonated with me well was The One Thing, and it helped me to kind of look at focus in a different type of way. But it kind of it sounds like kind of something related to the Atomic Habits, because I didn't like the one thing because you only do one thing, but it kind of set things up like dominoes. So when you start to do that one thing, just kind of how it sounds like with Atomic Habits, it starts to propel you into doing other things, and you start to make a bigger impact.
Yeah, I know in the book he references it just one, like if you're not a person that works out all the time and you want to become the person that works out all the time, you might wake up and some days you can go to the gym for 90 minutes and you can just kill it, but some days you can't. Well, the person that really wants to do that will go drive to the gym, show up for 5 minutes and then leave. But they made the effort to make it a part of every single day because they want that to be part of their identity. So I haven't quite mastered that part quite yet, but we're getting there.
There we go. It's all a process. Life is a process. Business is definitely a process. And I think, sometimes we build it up in our head that we have to do so much. But like you said, if that person is, said, I want to go to the gym, and they're just going to the gym, they make that habit. Maybe on that day, they only went for 5 minutes, but maybe a year from now, they're going for the 30 minutes, and then all of a sudden they're crushing their goals and their dreams and doing everything. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Nice. And now I wanted to ask you for what I call a CEO nugget. And this is a word of wisdom or a piece of advice, or if you can hop into a time machine, what would you tell your younger business self?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, there's so many different things you can do to try to learn and plug in and do things better. And leadership's is a big, big, big one. Mm-hmm. The thing that I found, and I don't want people to read into this and think beyond what I'm saying, but if you lead almost like a parent leads, and when you lead people in that way where don't treat them like children, I'm not saying your employees are children, right, but when you're working with somebody and the end goal isn't that they get this one task done and done right, maybe there's circumstances where that has to be the case, but you wouldn't do that with your children. I mean, if they didn't, do a chore exactly the way that you wanted to, you weren't going to kick them out of the home for it. And that kind of, I think, attitude when you start working with people, and I wouldn't tell your employees you're going to start treating them like children. But what I do mean is when you start doing that and you start looking at things like you would a parent, in a parent-child relationship, you start saying, wow, I'm building for the longer term and investing in this person. And when I'm doing that, I have to be able to let them fail in order for them to grow. And if they're going to do that, then yeah, it's going to come with a few bumps in the road. But work on intent, not necessarily the exact result in some cases. But that's probably the one thing that I think I learned over time that had better results than it was to simply sit there and say, these are the 3 things you have to do, and I'm only going to hold you, satisfactory or not based on those achievements. So.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And that's an incredible, perspective. And I think there might be some parents that are listening to this saying they do want to kick their kids out because they're not doing their chores. But in all seriousness, I think what you're talking about, hits home, because I think that a lot of times I usually say when you peel back the onion of business, you really forget it's made up of people, and we're looking to kind of, cultivate those relationships, build up the people just like you would, your parents or people that you love and you care for. And you're not going to just say, oh, like they always talk about, like, whenever a child first learns to walk and then they fall down, you don't say, oh, well, walking is not for you. Maybe you're not cut out to walk. You build them up, you cultivate them, you give them, that feedback that allows them to get up and walk. And you would do the exact same thing, for, people that are in your organization. So you shouldn't change the way you would do that based off of if somebody's your child or if somebody's like your employee or your teammate.
Yeah. I mean, in the end, we really want to be successful, and we want everybody that is around us to be successful, help foster that rather than, be the one that starts to kill that. I mean, they'll go find it somewhere else, and so.
Exactly. Create that environment that you would want to be in as well. I always say the golden rule applies everywhere. So that makes perfect sense. So now I wanted to ask you my absolute favorite question, which is the definition of what it means to be a CEO. And we're hoping to have different quote unquote CEOs on this show. So Brian, what does being a CEO mean to you?
Yeah, it's to me, it really just starts with wanting to serve. And I mean, it's employees, customers, the community. When you're kind of the engine of the train or whatnot, you're kind of taking things in a path that you want to go, but at the same time, that should be meeting those things. So, I mean, I really enjoy getting the chance to, sit down with employees, explain to them and let them know where my thoughts are on why we're serving our customers in a certain way, but get their suggestions. Not all our customers are exactly like me anyways. So stands to reason I'm not going to be the best opinion all the time on exactly how to do it, but give them a chance to have some input. Obviously with customers, they're your lifeblood, but at the same time, you want to build up to how am I delivering more to them than just what they're asking, so that they feel like, wow, this is somebody that, we really want to work with, because they're going to go out of their way to try and meet our needs, even if our needs keep changing. And then I'm a big believer in the community side of things, whether it's the online community, the IAM CEO community, all of them. It's just, how can you impart things that help everybody get a little bit better? I mean, the world's filled with abundance that we can all have. It doesn't have to go to, just certain people at certain times, that sort of thing. So.
Yeah, I love that perspective and that mentality. It's just that abundant mindset where you see all those opportunities and being of service. Because I think a lot of times, sometimes people feel like when you give or you are of service, then, there's not enough or there's a lack and that you will never get anything back. But in reality, you create a lot of energy. So to be of service in so many different ways, whether it be employees or like you mentioned, the community and giving back, it's definitely something that always comes back. So I definitely appreciate that perspective. I appreciate your time even more, Brian. What I want to do is pass you the mic, so to speak, just to see if there's anything additional you can let our readers and listeners know. And then, of course, how best people can get a hold of you and find out about all the awesome things you guys are working on.
Yeah, no, I think you've got the website information, things like that. I mean, check us out at mjstrategicgroup.com. Trying to do a lot of different things. We continue to try and evolve with our client base, had a lot of fun along the way, but we're in a perpetual learning state, so it doesn't stop. And, we tune in and listen to the other CEOs that come on and try to gain a few things. I mean, it's a perfect way to kind of give and receive. So appreciate the time, the energy, and what you guys are doing there too.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you for being of service and sharpening the saw. Help us to sharpen the saw as well. We will make sure to have the links and information in the show notes so that everybody can follow up with you as well and get in touch. But thank you so much again, Brian, for all you're doing. And I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you for listening to the I Am CEO podcast powered by Blue 16 Media. Tune in next time and visit us at IAM425.co. I Am CEO is not just a phrase, it's a community. Be sure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Google Play, and everywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe and leave us a 5-star rating. Grab CEO gear at www.ceogear.co. This has been the I Am CEO podcast with Gresham Harkless. Thank you for listening.